Sunday. Welcome to another episode of True Story Live. It's the first show in March 2019. Happy to be here again, as usual. And if you're just tuning in to the show for the first time, welcome. And I'll get to that in just a little bit. Tonight's topic is going to be Adventure Part 1, Kiss of Life. And we'll get into that topic in just a little bit. So if you're listening to the playback and you want to kind of skip all the introductions and all the fun stuff at the beginning, then certainly feel free to go to about the 10-minute mark, and then we'll dive right into that topic. So as usual, we have a lovely panel of people that are always supportive of the show and that come on here to help me do this broadcast on YouTube that I just absolutely enjoy and love, and we try to do a lot of things here with the broadcast on TSL, and I'm going to talk more about that in just a minute as well. So first of all, we have Glenn back with us, back from he came back last week from Japan, and so we're glad to have him back in the rotation. So I'll go to him first. Glenn, say hello to the people.
Hello, Mr. Cripps and all the people.
Yes.
Mr. Cripps. Yes, sounds weird.
Mr. Cripps. I've moved up in the world.
Mate, you're at the top of the range, other than one.
We're really glad to have you back, Glenn. You were very missed while you were gone, believe it or not. And so we're glad to have you back on the broadcast. So
thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Then, of course, we have the lovely, amazing, the talented Jen is with us again. Jen, how are you this evening?
Battling a little bit of a residual headache, but other than that, I am great.
Well, I hope the headache gets better, but you sound cheerful and everything, even with the headache. So
this will be a delightful distraction.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll go away once I start focusing on something else.
Yeah, sure. Get the mind off the headache. We're glad to have you, Jen.
Glad to be here.
Okay. Also, we have with us Steve, the Mad Max, the Road Warrior. Steve, how you doing?
Mad Max.
Yeah.
I'm good. I'm not mad today.
No. Yeah. And just so everybody knows, that's just a nickname I gave him. The first time that I had met Steve on a broadcast, someone told me he was a trucker. And I always, when I know someone's a trucker, I can't help it, but I get the memory of the Mad Max movies and Road Warrior. And so I called him Steve the Mad Max Road Warrior. And I don't always call him that, but it just kind of stuck in my mind. So every time I introduce him, that's the thought that comes into my head. And then later, and then later in our relationship, he had shared with me that back in the day, sometimes he did used to get mad. So it ended up working out just fine.
Yeah.
But
awesome.
I can tell you though, I've never heard Steve mad thus far. So it seems like maybe it might be behind you, Steve.
I don't want to say that's not behind me, but I'm grateful that you say that. But I definitely have been known to have a temper at times. So,
sure.
But I'm grateful that through the Lord's help and walking with him that it's not as often of a thing for sure.
Yeah.
But I certainly don't want to say, oh, I've got this, because as scripture says, pride goeth before the fall.
That's true.
So I want to keep myself aware of it just in case.
There you go. Well, you've always done a very good job on the show, and your show also, which is on Saturday nights. We'll get back to that probably toward the end. We'll talk about everybody's channel and everything, but you had a podcast go on last night. We'll mention that again a little bit. Also,
awesome.
Yep. Also tonight we have back with us Matthias from Talking Doctrine. He's a regular panel member, and we're glad to have you back, Matthias. How are you this evening?
I am doing well. Eating some key lime pie, so life is good.
Key lime. Now, is it? I'm going to assume, based on your dietary choices, that it is the real key lime pie and not just out of a freezer at a supermarket. Is that correct?
It's Paula made.
Paula made. See, that's perfect. I'm a big fan of key lime pie. There's a restaurant chain called O'Charlie's, and it's the only place that I used to be able to occasionally go in and get a real piece of key lime pie. I haven't had any homemade in quite some time, but it is one of my favorites. I don't eat desserts very often, but when I do, that's one of them I like to choose from. So I'm sure she's there listening. Maybe, I don't know. So maybe you can't be completely upfront about the quality of it, but just for the sake of argument, how good is it? How does it stack up against other key lime pies?
Well, from Daniel's wife, she said it was the best that she had ever had. I'm used to it, so it's just normal to me. I get one there. I get one. I get my signature key lime pie as my birthday cake. So
nice.
And what you did this year is made cupcake crusts. So I've got I don't know, maybe 10 little key lime pie.
Nice. That sounds really good, actually.
Actually, kind of it's perfect crust to filling ratio when they're that small too.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. So you just had a birthday. What was the day before yesterday?
Yesterday, actually.
Yesterday. Yeah. So happy birthday to you. And
thank you.
I won't.
One year closer to being over the hill, so not far away.
There you go. I can tell you, as being someone that is over the hill, it makes no difference.
Yay!
Yeah. It makes no difference.
Praise God.
Yeah, and then once you get to a certain point, it's just another year. I mean, it's just chronological. That's all it ends up being. But it amazes me how many people really seem to be bothered by that, like reaching certain age milestones.
It's because when you get over the hill, you pick up speed.
Oh, okay.
On the descent downward.
Oh, okay. Well, that would be kind of depressing, wouldn't it? Oh, your life's over now.
The hill idea comes from.
Yeah,
you know, because when you start getting older in life, things just start to fall apart, and it seems like they fall apart at a more rapid pace, I've heard.
Yeah, well,
when you get over the hill.
Yeah, that may be true. I know that I take care of my grandma. She's 93, and she's been over the hill for quite some time, but she still keeps getting up, and she's ready to go home. She's made that very clear that she's ready. But you know, she doesn't have any control over it. She keeps getting up and making her bed and opening up her curtains and taking on another day. So I guess it all depends on the person's attitude that they have about when they are over the hill, of whether it seems like they're headed towards the end of something or the beginning of something, depending on how they look at it. So think about that, Steve.
That's beautiful.
All right. So we'll get started. It is the 10-minute mark. So thank you guys for being on the panel as usual. And then I just want to say hello to everyone in the chat room. Thank you guys for showing up again on another Sunday. We're glad to have you here. And just remember that if you have any questions or comments, or you want to answer any of the questions that we will get to in just a little bit, please either put them all in caps or highlight them. And all you have to do to highlight them is if you put in the shift and do the @ symbol, and then put in whoever's name that you want to address the question to, and it'll highlight it for me in yellow, so that or I think it's in yellow. It'll highlight it for me that I can see it. And we're always checking to make sure that if you do make a comment, that we try to see you and respond. If you ask a question and we're in the middle of something, do give us a little bit of time, because if someone's answering a question, we will wait till the panel has had an opportunity, unless there's something really, really pressing. And then, of course, we would try to address that as quickly as possible. So just be patient with us. We'll definitely get to your answer. All right. So before we start, I just want to thank Renee Rowland, who this past week did a lovely referral video from her channel Renee Rowland, and about our show, about True Story Live. It was a complete surprise to me. She did tell me ahead of time and asked me to do a little write-up for what TSL kind of stands for, and I'll read that momentarily and fill that in just a little bit. But we had 50, like close to 50, or a little bit over 50 new subscribers since she put out the referral video. So I just wanted to say publicly how much I appreciate Renee taking the time not only to do the video, but to also she fit the gospel into it as well, which is that's definitely what her main thrust is, to stick the gospel into a referral video, which I've actually put on our page right on TSL. So when people come to the page, they can see that. It definitely gives them an idea of what we're trying to do on the show from someone else's perspective. And it was extremely helpful. I'm very, very grateful, and we're all grateful here on the panel for her taking the time to do that. And if you're listening to this show for the first time and you came over from a referral from Renee, I would love it if you would say something in the comments about that you were referred from Renee, so we can get to know you a little bit. If you're in the chat and you're new to the show, just say hello to everyone. Everyone in here is friendly. Everyone will welcome you and make sure that you kind of know how things go. And we're glad to have you. If you're listening to playback in your referral, just please put in the comments that you saw Renee's video and you came over from her channel, which we'd like to say hello to and introduce ourselves. All right. So then what I'm going to do just really quickly is read the referral that I sent to Renee, if you haven't seen it already. And it's not very long. Okay, so the purpose of True Story Live, I wrote, we want to include all comers to come and listen to stories, true stories of life, belief, striving to survive in a broken world. We talk about a variety of subjects, mostly having to deal with emotions and life issues, all with the idea of the gospel underpinning everything. We as believers on the panel answer questions from a self-proclaimed atheist that acts more like a Christian than many so-called Christians. The goal of the show is to stand in the gap between belief and unbelief, between saved and unsaved, and bring them into a safe, non-threatening dialogue and hope that they can feel and see love acted out in real life. We are not a Bible study show, but we simply want to discuss things in terms of how we should live and show love for one another rather than hate-filled vitriol. True Story Live is about truly living and the stories that come out of that. So that's the write-up that Renee read on her channel. And again, very grateful for that. And as we have new subscribers and new people listening to the show, it's not going to change anything necessarily. We're always striving to change and continue to fine-tune the purpose of the show. The purpose of the show originally was very different than what it's turned into, and that's understandable because it's just the natural morphing from one thing to another. But my original dream was to tell all just true stories, have people share their stories from their life of things that happened to them, things that they learned, whether it would be struggle into success or testimonies or that sort of thing. But starting out from scratch, I didn't have a lot of takers. So I kept asking people to do that, and didn't seem to have a lot of people that were willing to come on and do it. And also it was a call-in show where people could actually dial a phone number and call in and talk to us. And we did have a few callers, and then over time, as we did it more and more, more people got involved. And then when we moved over to YouTube, of course, then we kind of changed the format into a question and answers kind of show where we're doing a dialogue based on questions being asked. And so that's how the current TSL was born. And so the write-up that I read at the beginning is just kind of a basis for the show. And before we get started, I would just like to ask the panel, did you have anything you wanted to add to the purpose that we have here on TSL that maybe I didn't mention? Any of you guys want to add anything to that? Okay. No problem.
No, I think that I thought that was really good. And
Okay.
you know, we've talked about the purpose of the show, you know,
Sure.
just being a open space pretty much.
Mhm.
To where really especially I'd say it's to show, number one, non-believers that there really are real Christians out there that can know how to love
Mhm.
them regardless of where they're coming from in life.
Yeah.
And then I'd say number two would just be pretty much the same thing, but for believers that
Mhm.
they also can have a place to come and feel free of the judgmental attitudes of many that call themselves Christians.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that, Steve, because if you hadn't said it, I would add that. Yeah. So it's for people that have been in other YouTube chat rooms, and they see all the infighting and backbiting and false converts that call themselves believers that seem to want to attack and make things difficult for everyone else. And we don't do that here. We want everyone, regardless of your spiritual beliefs or your non-existent beliefs when it comes to spiritual things. We just want to treat each other with respect and have conversations and on various topics. And we're able to do that. This is, I think, the 21st show, isn't that right? It's
Yeah.
yeah. So this is the 21st show, and there's not one episode where it descended into madness or people yelling at each other or calling people names or any of that business. Also, our chat room is very well behaved. We have people that are regulars that come and listen, and they treat each other with dignity and respect, and they actually listen to the content and are involved. And it's just a wonderful thing. I couldn't be any more proud of the regulars that come and listen to True Story Live. And yeah, so I think we covered that enough. I do want to get into the topic, and we'll do that right now. So again, guys, especially in the chat, thank you guys for being part of the show. And you guys are the reason why we do this. And also, if you have any suggestions for future broadcasts or any subjects that you want us to cover, you can reach me at truestorylive.crips@gmail.com. And yeah, I do take criticism well. So if you have things that you don't like, please feel free to share that with me also. If you have prayer requests or if you want to do a testimony and have it be on TSL, where we sometimes we've done a couple of those during the week, and we didn't really get into it all that much yet, but that's because people haven't stepped up to be willing to do it. So if you want to give your testimony and want to have a conversation with us, definitely please let us know and we can set something up. Okay. So tonight's topic, as mentioned, is Adventure Part 1, Kiss of Life. The Oxford Dictionary defines adventure as an unusual and exciting or daring experience. So is love a daring experience, an adventure? with God, self, and others? Is love a spiritual, emotional, and sensual experience for you in all facets of love's diamond? Tonight, we're going to explore the interconnection of these very love relationships, God, self, and others. After all, believers say God is love. So we are just working down from the top of the relationship pyramid. Sade makes the point, and I did include the link in there, and we're not going to play the song on the show, but if you want to listen to that, it's in the details on the page there. You can click on that, listen to it. It's beautiful. From the song, one of the lyrics is, "There must have been an angel by my side. Something heavenly came down from above. He led me to you. He led me to you." I don't do it justice. She has a beautiful voice, so definitely check that out. Okay, it's a secular romantic song, but maybe not so far from reality. Does openness to God in your personal relationship with Him provide a door key for incredible life-changing experiences in this life? Does love in your heart and mind multiply with every input, regardless of where it comes from? It's up for discussion. Do you set aside a separate compartment for God and one for living, or does it all work in cooperation with each other? Do we become more spiritual as we become more loving, or does it work in reverse? Believers can be empathetic at times with the thought, God is everything and nothing else matters. If you believe God created you out of love, then is it reasonable to suggest that God wants to see you with as much love in your life as there can be? The color of love is surely not meant to be black, but all colors of the rainbow, which adds up to angelic white. Love is easy and uncomplicated. After all, it's just love. Love in its purest form is harmonious, natural, beautiful, and adventurous. Love is effortless. Life can be effortful. Don't get the two confused. All right, perfect. So beautiful, beautiful introduction to the show. Thank you, Glenn. It's a fascinating topic and one that I personally enjoy talking about. I think everyone has experienced some kind of love in their life, even if it's love from parents or friends or family or a one-on-one relationship. So it is definitely a topic that the world is interested in. We have movies and songs about love. There are sonnets and poems and stories, both fiction and nonfiction. It's everywhere. I don't know anyone that doesn't at least have some kind of idea what love is. But when we look at the divorce rates and we look at how often it seems to fail, maybe that they don't know. Maybe not everyone knows what it means to love and what it means to be loved. So we're going to dig into that a little bit tonight with the questions. There's actually a lot of questions to ask. We do have the main ones, and when I come to one of those, I will make sure that everyone knows that that's one of the numbered questions. So from the description, the first question that we come up with is love a daring experience, an adventure? Does anyone want to weigh in on that embedded question from the description?
Yeah.
Jen's right up. She's ready to go. Is love a daring experience, an adventure, Jen?
I would say yes. I think when love goes awry and when it's going swimmingly, it's an adventure in both ways. I think it can be like Indiana Jones with a big boulder thing trying to run you down. Or sometimes it's just like just wonderful and full of joy. So I think it can be both, but an adventure all the time, yes.
Yeah. So you're saying even through bad times or perilous times, as you use the example from the boulder trying to crush the person, that's still, you can still get something out of that,
Yes,
whether it's good or bad. That's an excellent point. Wow. Thanks, Jen, for starting us off with that one. That was good. Anyone else want to take it next? Steve?
What was the exact question again? Is love a daring experience?
Yeah, is love a daring experience and adventure?
It sure can be. um, uh, Reminds me of a song by Stephen Curtis Chapman called "The Great Adventure."
Who's
That
it
was
by
about
again? I think it messed up.
Stephen Curtis Chapman.
Oh, still there. Thank you.
Stephen Curtis Chapman, a song called "The Great Adventure," and it's about our uh, walk with God and our experience with Him, and even coming to the place of belief is an adventure.
Mm-hmm.
But certainly in relationships, it can be an adventure. And I'd say that's probably one of the best ways to describe it, because an adventure has ups and downs, does it not?
It does, yeah.
An adventure, you go on a quest to somewhere, especially if you like adventuristic stories or books or, drama, intense drama movies where, there's a, there's this, you know, intensity to it, but it's both ups and downs. And,
Mm-hmm.
I would say that, that's the case with life in general.
Yeah.
And I would also say that's the case with love. And first and foremost, I would say that another song comes to mind by DC Talk, "Love is a Verb."
Oh my
Um,
gosh, love is a verb. Say more about that.
yeah, and I'm glad you asked because I was going to.
Good. I
um,
knew you were, Steve. I knew you were.
so there is a part of love that is a verb, and that the highest symbology of that kind of love was shown in Christ on the cross.
Mm-hmm.
And that he chose to do that for us, and so there's an action component to love.
Yeah.
You say you love your spouse, but if all you do is say that and you don't do anything to show that love, do you
Mm.
really actually love her?
Oh, that's such a great point, Steve. I have to just interject one thing right there. Yeah, you can tell someone you love them every minute of every day. You can just say, I love you, I love you, I love you. But if there's no action to back it up, does the person really believe you? Are you really able to feel someone's love just by words? I don't know. Me personally, I'm not. I've had people tell me they love me, and then it turns out not to have been true. So for me, it's not that I don't ever believe anyone that says I love you, but usually for me, it means so much more if it's backed up by action, thus it being a verb. And you using Christ as an example, of course, it was one of the greatest examples of all time, but there are even smaller examples in everyday life where someone goes out of their way to make sure that the person that they're involved with knows that they're loved. And you can do that in a number of ways, certainly in a marriage.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So anything else on that, Steve? I interjected while you were.
No, that's quite all right. And that when it comes to love, one of the greatest things with love that actually shows you really love someone, number one would be the willingness to look past each other's faults, because
Yes.
we're human, inevitably we will fail each other at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And number two would be the when those times happen, same thing with saying I love you, saying I'm sorry is great.
Mm-hmm.
But do you actually mean that? And the same is true with love being shown in action.
Mm-hmm.
The same is true with I'm sorry being shown in action.
Ooh, that's a good one too.
You can say I'm sorry all day long,
Mm-hmm.
but if you keep repeating the same thing that really hurts whether it's your spouse or friend or whatever, and you keep doing that, number one, it tells me you really weren't sorry. You probably were just sorry you got caught.
Yes.
Or you don't want to admit that, that you really did something stupid. And number two would be that really you didn't mean it at all.
Yeah, that's true.
So I mean, and when it comes to love and relationships, there is some kind of, especially for a believer, the idea of, okay, I still look past it when you do fail.
Yeah.
And love you in spite of that failure, which is what Christ did from the beginning. And with love, I think we've because we speak the English language instead of some other languages that have several words for love.
Yeah.
Because there's several different types of love.
True.
That we've lost something along the way by just calling it all in this whole big category, just love.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, I love you like a brother. I love you like God. I love you romantically. I love you sensually. I love, especially for when in the case of a spouse, you have all these different parts of love that by just calling it just love, we've lost something there in the meaning of love.
All right. Thanks, Steve. Gosh, that was a great answer. So let's see. We have Matthias next. If you are ready, Matthias, is love a daring experience, an adventure?
I don't think so. I think love. Well, are we talking about biblically or worldly?
You can answer in any way that you choose to answer. I mean, it's however you feel led to answer is fine.
Well, I would just say I think love is, for one, a choice.
Yes.
And two, sacrificial. So I don't think either one are necessarily daring or an adventure, sure.
Okay.
But daring, no. I don't think there's anything daring about choosing to love the ones you love.
Okay. So if you're risking, if it is, as you said, sacrificial, you don't think it's a risk, or it's at all daring to go ahead and sacrifice things for the person when it's not based on them reacting to you in a positive way.
No, if it's real love, then it doesn't matter how they react.
Yeah, there you go. I completely agree. Thanks, Matthias. I appreciate your answer. I would say that it is both daring and an adventure. I do agree with what Matthias said, that it is a choice. And there was a couple of people that said that at the chat room. Alex mentioned that decision, not emotion. I would agree. It is a decision. It can be based on emotions to begin with, but emotion doesn't carry you all the way through. Not with all the things that come up in life. So deciding to love someone is, choosing to be in a marriage and being in a relationship, and as Steve said, overlooking faults and things like that. A lot of times those are decisions. It's decisions not only solely based on emotion, but speaking from experience, even my first marriage that failed, there were adventures in the relationship, and it was daring. I learned a lot from it. I learned more from the divorce than I did the marriage itself, but there were still things that I got out of that. I learned what love isn't. That's for sure. I learned that my understanding of love was some of it was based on fairy tales and not based on the reality of what love should be. And one of the biggest things I learned is you can love someone, or you can think you love someone all you want, but if they're unable to feel love, then it doesn't matter. You loving someone, it does take two. You can love someone from afar and just decide to love them, but when it comes to relationships, it does take two people both choosing to love the other. And by that decision, a lot of times the emotions are definitely a part of it. It's not like the emotions are divorced from the decision, but they do. They should come with the decision first, and the emotions can come after that, and not the other way around. I know in marriages and falling, and I'm doing air quotes, nobody can see, but falling in love with a person, a lot of times emotions come first, and then maybe the decision never comes. You fall in love with the person, and you go through the steps that it takes to be a part of that kind of relationship. And then, life happens, circumstances happen, and sometimes there was never a decision to continue in that. So once the feelings die down, then so does the relationship. Now, for a believer, that doesn't matter. I mean, for believers, we would base it on God's love. And then we're tied into the vine. We're tied into him. And he gives us the strength and power to love each other despite the circumstances. And of course, a non-believer wouldn't make that assertion, I'm sure. But we have Glenn yet to answer from his perspective as well. So Glenn, would you like to answer this one? Is love a daring experience, an adventure, sir?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a yes, emphatically. But I just want to say a couple of things here, because with the non-believer's hat, before age 40, I didn't understand love at all. I had no real concept of what it meant, and this might come as a bit of a shock for some people, but it was only after I embraced the spiritual side of myself.
Hold on, Glenn. They're having trouble hearing you. This is what I was afraid of. That sound in there, it's just it sucks up all the sound. So I don't know.
Hang on. I'm just going to open the door and see if that helps. Wait for 1 sec.
Guys, just bear with us for a minute. Glenn's in a empty office apparently, and it sounds really kind of boxy.
Is that any better?
Yeah, I think it is. Say a little bit more.
Yeah, that's better.
It is? Okay, no. It's just I'm in a room with this gym, so nothing on the walls. So it's boxing.
Okay.
So I've opened the door. Okay, should I start again?
I believe you should, sir.
Okay, what did I actually say? Yes, I did. I said, is love a daring experience? Absolutely. Yes, 100%. If I took it away, it would be devastation, totally. But and the point I was getting to this really too, and from a non-believer's point of view, this might sound strange to some of the people out there. Before 40, I didn't actually understand what love was all about. But then when I embrace the spiritual part of myself, obviously nothing to do with God, but still incredibly important for me, then it all dropped on me like a bombshell.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that just basically opened the door to amazing experiences. Now, there was a couple of comments about love as a choice, and I'm not necessarily in agreement with that, because I can only speak from my own circumstances. Sometimes people come along and you have no choice.
Sure.
Because it's my wife. It has to be. I mean, that's an amazing. She came along. It was preordained. I know that sounds crazy for a non-believer, but it felt like it. It felt like I'd been with this person my whole life.
Right.
And now we just happened to get together. It's just the time was right, and you just popped together. And exactly as I've said on previous shows, we went home together after a couple of hours of meeting, and we've been together for 20 years, and it's never been any different from day one.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't a choice to my mind; it was a given.
Okay.
So thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, let me throw this in there. So I would say, it's not that I disagree with what you're saying, but I would say that all the decisions that you made in your life leading up to the point in which you met Sandra were definitely impacted your readiness to be in that particular relationship. Every decision that you made, what books you decided to read, what choices you made before that, the reason you were there in the first place, everything you'd learned, all your maturity and growth, past relationships, ones you decided to be a part of and others that you didn't, all of that had to do with choices that you made and decisions that led up to that point.
That's very correct. That is absolutely correct.
Okay. Yeah.
You can't possibly argue that because it is experiential.
Mm-hmm.
It is a sequence of events and the way that you live your life, etc., etc.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see from a belief point of view that's equally valid as well. And everything draws you to a point, and then it just sort of, if you're open to it, it drops on you. It just it does.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Glenn. I appreciate that. All right. So far, so good. So the second question embedded in the description is, it goes off the first question. So does it include with God, self, and others? Is love a spiritual, emotional, and sensual experience for you in all facets of love's diamond? So with God, self, and others, is love a spiritual, emotional, and sensual experience for you? Does anyone want to take that one first? Okay, I will go first. Yes, absolutely. A spiritual, emotional, and sensual experience in all facets of love's diamond. Yes. Spiritual is first in my mind as a believer. My connection with God is absolutely first, and everything is based on that for me. It may not be that way for everyone. I'm not answering for anyone else, just me. The spiritual aspect of my belief in God and what I've learned from the Bible and learned from Him and my relationship with Him is the underpinning of the way that I love other people. I try as much as I am able with the power that He gives me to follow His Christ's two laws, which is love God with everything and love your neighbor as yourself. And we've talked on other broadcasts of how essential it is to know what loving yourself looks like in order for you to be able to love other people. And that's not a selfish love, but a selfless love. So when you have that kind of background and that underpinning, you are able to love someone else and be part of a relationship and not have it be based on just yourself, but based on God helping you to do that. I realize that someone that doesn't believe in God at all would just at the face value of it would just think that was ridiculous. But if you're even able just to believe that we have a spiritual side, it would be easy to understand that as a spiritual person, you would have a connection to something greater than yourself and be able to tie into that. And it certainly is that way for me. I'm an emotional person. I'm not overly emotional, I don't think, but I am very connected to my emotions. My emotional intelligence tested pretty high, and that just means that I'm able to feel my own emotions and be aware of what I'm feeling. Sure, there are times that I might feel something and I've got to sort out what it is and why I'm feeling it. But love definitely is something that I feel I have felt on an emotional level. And so it's all the facets of love that come through that I think living this life as long as I have had a chance to experience a lot of those things. Are there levels of love that I have not yet felt? Yes, absolutely. I feel like as long as we live, I think, especially if you're in a marriage, a long-lasting marriage, in order to be in that marriage, I'm sure it's different for those people that have been married, say, 40 years or 50 years even. I'm sure it's different for them than it was on the first day. I just absolutely love to hear stories about people that have been married for a very, very long time. I just think it shows tenacity, and it shows choice. It shows being tough under life circumstances, and job troubles, and physical health, and tragedy and triumph. All those things, all the facets of life, and how they're able to love each other still underneath everything. I'm just fascinated by those types of stories. Okay, Steve, do you want to take this next one? Are you available?
Sure.
All right. So, is love a
Sure.
spiritual, emotional, and sensual experience for you in all facets of love's diamond, Steve?
Woo! Big question.
Sure.
Big question. With God, self, and others. So
Yep.
I'll tackle those in order.
Okay.
God, spiritual, of course. God is a spirit. Those that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth.
Mm-hmm.
Emotional, yes. Um, uh, the Bible says, if haply they might feel after him. And that goes along with the senses. God tells us in His Word that we can also sense who He is by nature and
Mm-hmm.
what's around us.
Yes.
So you have your five senses. You also have your emotions. You also have the fact that you are a reborn spirit as a believer.
Mm-hmm.
And so all those things work together, in our walk with God, and even coming to the place of belief that those things can lead us there, because uh, even prior to our being reborn, being born again, um, the the spirit of God is what is the breath of life that causes us to be able to live. So, um, that Jesus was the light that came into the world that lights every man,
Mm-hmm.
to come to the knowledge of the truth. And so, um, and I think love sure, with that, again, the daring experience, in America, it's not maybe quite so much of a daring experience to love God, but and
Yeah.
certainly in other places, right? Not yet. It's getting there, but it's certainly not like in Iraq, Afghanistan, and
China.
Syria,
Yeah.
China, North Korea,
Mm-hmm.
places like that, where you say you love Jesus, you're either going to jail, or getting your head chopped off, or being burnt alive,
Yep.
or being stoned to death. And so certainly that is a daring thing to proclaim,
Mm-hmm.
that you love Jesus.
Yeah.
And but all of that together is, I can, there's times where I can feel God's presence more than others, in places and things, and even, just from day to day living, to when, I'm, worshiping God on my own or in prayer. I can sense differences in, of all of that. And it certainly is emotional. There's ups and downs, especially when, God reveals something to you that you need to work on, and you're
Sure.
like, oh man, and you grieve over those things.
Yeah.
But you also have joy when are doing right, and you feel, God's joy over you as his child, that
Right.
you're, trying to be obedient and walk with him, and
Mm-hmm.
that joy that comes when you are worshiping him, and stuff like that. So,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a
Yeah.
spiritual component that, some might think I'm crazy, especially non-believers, but there are times where, you feel transfixed between this reality and the reality of heaven.
Ooh, yeah.
When you're in one of those times of worship, and deep prayer or things like that, where you're here, but you have a greater sense of the reality of God and heaven, and his presence and all of that. So there's, I mean,
Yeah.
it's one of those kinds of questions that's very hard to put into tangible terms that is understandable.
Yeah, it's
And
hard
all
to
I can
explain it.
say is believe in Jesus and worship him and find out for yourself.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, that's perfect. It's it's difficult.
Self,
It's difficult to explain it to someone that's never experienced that. It looks at you like
right,
you're crazy. They've never experienced anything
right,
beyond what they would
right,
consider a normal experience. So,
right. The self thing for me is almost tougher to answer because, if you say you love yourself, most people are going to think you're conceited.
that's true.
And to a certain extent, loving myself is a realization that apart from God loving me, really, without his strength in me, really, I'd be a horrible individual,
Oh
and
yeah,
I'd be really hard to love.
me too.
Because for
Me
me,
too.
I have the proclivity to make dumb choices.
Yeah,
Um, and even hurtful choices to myself and to others.
sure.
Um, you know, uh, whether it be people or a job, I've had the tendency to, ruin relationships on purpose
Okay.
because I've felt at times like I didn't deserve it. So I've catastrophically
Self
done
sabotage.
things self-stop. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and I know I've done that. And so that's part of being a wretched person, that it makes it so much more great, God's love for me, and seeing myself in that light
Hmm.
then allows me to love myself through the eyes of God
Right.
that sees me now perfect, even though I'm not, and then to do the same to others.
Yeah.
And so, that can certainly be emotional sometimes, where you're loving people that have hurt you,
Hmm.
or you're loving people that love you in return, and that's a wonderful thing
Sure it is.
when someone loves you back. I mean, there's a spiritual component to that, I believe.
Yeah.
Especially husband and wife,
Yep.
especially both believers. There's a spiritual connection there. There's an emotional connection there.
Hmm.
And yes, of course, for marriage, there's a sensual experience there
Yeah.
too. And I won't go into detail on that.
No, thank
Um,
you. Thanks.
um,
Keep it G, man. Rated G.
keep,
Gee,
keep it rated G. The Bible is not rated G, though.
no.
If we were to make an actual movie of all the components in the Bible, it would not be rated G. It would
No.
certainly be at least R,
Yeah,
uh,
that's
if
true.
not X. But there'd be a lot of believers that wouldn't watch it.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. Yeah. There are a lot of believers that wouldn't watch it. They would say, "I'm not filling my mind with that." That's for sure.
Right, when
Some.
it's the Bible, you
Yeah.
know. That's why a lot of believers don't read Song of Solomon. And if you read Song of Solomon with the understanding that it's both, uh, you know, from dating to marriage, an actual two people, but it's also the story of God loving us
Hmm.
and us searching for Him and Him running after us.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
that's
just
right.
beautiful, and so, with that, again, there's both sides to that aspect in a husband and wife. The wife searching for her husband,
Yep.
and the husband seeing her and seeing, and looking past all her flaws, but seeing her beauty irregardless and running after her. I mean, that's just beautiful. Um,
It's a
and
mutual
so
pursuit.
yes, yes, yes. And so that's what I
Perfect.
would say for all those three. And with the with the daring experience, it certainly goes against the grain of the world to love people that the world sees as unlovable.
I love it. Thank you, Steve. Thanks for your
Mm.
answer. Jen, would you like to go?
I was just gonna second what you had said earlier about, yes, it's spiritual, emotional, and sensual experience. Mine as well starts with God, and it's in that overflow that it pours out on the people around me. The sensual, I definitely, I think of it more of a relational thing, not so much with God and other people, but maybe I'm misunderstanding the definition of sensual. I don't know. Because automatically, like Steve was saying, it goes toward, the physical stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just an overflow of being connected to the vine, and your cup running over, of the love of God. It's just, for me, it's rooted in that and just spills out from there.
Okay, perfect. So it starts out with God and goes outward from inside you outward.
Yeah.
Onto others. That's perfect. Thank you. Matthias, you're up, buddy. If you want to answer this one.
Yeah, I can. I think mine's kind of simple with God, self, and others. I think that's cool because you basically got the first commandment: love God with all thine heart, all thy soul, and love others as yourself.
Yep.
So it's like right there in there.
Yeah, it is.
But is love a spiritual, emotional, and sensual experience for you in all the facets of love's diamond? Yeah. Yes, it is.
Perfect. Okay. Thanks, Matthias. Glenn, do you want to say anything about this?
Since Steve stole the time of everybody, I'm just going to say, yeah, man, I'll hit pay dirt.
I'm sorry.
Man, as I said, he gets paid by the minute.
Hey, try not to move around while you're answering the question, Glenn. That chair's absolutely. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to single you out, but every time you move around while you're talking, while your mic's on, I can't hear what you're saying.
No, we don't have oil in Australia, so I can't make it stop.
Okay.
Okay, okay. I'll move on, but yes, absolutely.
They don't have WD-40 in Australia.
No WD-40.
They do, but if I spray it, the cat doesn't like it.
Oh, okay.
Okay, yeah, I'm good. Thanks.
That's it?
I didn't hear his answer.
Yeah, I didn't.
I said yes. I struck pay dirt.
Okay, pay dirt. Gotcha. Okay.
That's it.
All right. So the first question we have, the first numbered question we have, question 1 is, can you describe the differences and similarities between love for God, love of self, and love for a partner, a friend, everyone? So can you describe the differences and similarities between love for God, love of self, and love for a partner, a friend, everyone? Yes, I'll go first. I can describe. So the differences between how I love God. I'm not God. I'm human, and God is perfect. So my love for him is different than it is for other humans. So the first difference would be that I'm loving someone that's perfect while I am completely fallible. And his love for me is perfect while mine is imperfect. So it's not an even up. It's not a. It's different in that because of his perfection, I can never attain perfect love for God. Fortunately, because he loves me and cares for me, then that difference doesn't keep us out of relationship. He offers love willingly, so that makes it easier for me to have a relationship with him in the first place. As far as with God, similarities, the only similarities I have with God are the ones that he instills in me. It's hard to find similarities with God, in my opinion. That's a longer thought process to try to play that out. I don't think that there are many similarities between us and God. He gives us certain gifts that we're similar to him in that we're in his likeness. We're we're made after his likeness. We do have the capability of being spiritual, but he's obviously way more powerful than us, and we're not all knowing. So that's another difference. I'm not all knowing. I'm not all powerful. I'm not able to be everywhere at once. So it's not a comparison really in that way. Love for self. I've talked about this before, but I have learned to love myself by trying to figure out how God loves me. I would have considered 20 years ago, I had some love for myself. I mean, I'm not going to go walk out in front of a bus. I care that I don't get injured. I care about relationships, that my heart doesn't get stomped on or put into a blender. So I did have some love for myself, but the more that I learned how to see myself through God's eyes, the more real love I felt for myself. And again, it was based on him and not me. Love for a partner, it's kind of I answered this a little bit in the question of being tied to God first and having him be first. When it comes for a partner or a friend or everyone else, I love other people because of God's love for me, because I have learned how much he loves me and why, and seeing myself through his eyes, I'm able to see other people through his eyes as well and feel his love for them. Beyond that, I don't think anyone has any built-in way to know how to love someone else. It is something that they see mimicked. I mean, we learn as kids, if our parents loved each other or not. We learn some love in that way. And then from the world, it seems awfully based on how much money a person makes, how beautiful a person is, what their social structure is, based on external things rather than internal things. And that could be a whole nother show about the way that the world views love and the way that God views it and the way the Bible views it. They're completely different things. Love in Scripture is selfless, not selfish, where when you hear people talk about love in the world, it's those things that I mentioned. It's like, what kind of car does he drive? What kind of job does he have? Is there security? And then the other things are secondary. And I think we see that in the amount of divorces that we have, at least in America. We see that obviously when people get married, maybe it's not based on the things that last or the things that matter, because people lose their jobs and they get older and they lose their looks. So if you're basing love on that, I don't base it on that. I base it on internal things and spiritual things and emotional and the way a person thinks. Sure, I'd be lying if I said that the way a person looks has no impact, but it's not why I love them. I love them based on a lot of other things. Friends is the same way. Other people, people that I'm friends with, I love them for a variety of different reasons. Loyalty is extremely important to me. A person being loyal and being trustworthy is huge to me. It may not mean something to everyone, but just because of the amount of friendships where there's been a betrayal of some sort. That's the first thing I look for, is whether a person's going to be not worthy of friendship, but being willing to be in a relationship and not just leave if things get tough. Be willing to stick it out for a while. So I tend now, I have some friends that I've known a long time, and there's differences and similarities. I guess I couldn't speak for what other people feel are different. I think similar people, the similar way that people I surround myself with have some of the same values, loyalty and intelligence and being there for me and me being there for them. So there's some similarities there. That's my answer to question one. Does anyone want to go next for question one?
I'll go next.
Jen, take it away.
All right. The difference for me with love for God and with self, partner, and friends, everyone, would be that I'm incredibly aware that He is the creator of everything.
Mm-hmm.
So the love for Him surpasses anything else. The similarities of love for God and self, partner, friends, and everyone else is the similarity is that it's incredibly deep. Maybe not in the same depth, but very deep.
Mm-hmm.
And it's out of an appreciation for love and feeling it, giving it, and the fact that it exists at all for us to experience. Being able to love myself and others is an amazing experience and brings me a lot of joy. And I think it brings God a lot of joy that we experience that and display it to other people. So that's my answer.
Perfect. Thanks for sharing, Jen.
You're welcome.
Now, Glenn, this time, since you said Steve took up the time, I'll go to you first. So go ahead and what's your answer to question 1, Glenn?
Yeah. Okay, well, obviously, can't answer both. So
okay, hold on. Glenn, please.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to call you out.
I'm not moving. I'm in a coffin.
It's the chair.
It's the chair. When you're talking, when you're answering the question.
That?
Yes, that.
I can't even hear it. I got hit, but okay, I'm going to sit
extremely loud. That's all you can hear. I can't hear what you're saying coming out of your mouth. That's the only thing the microphone picks up is that sound.
Okay, I'm going to get an injection to paralyze me so I can't move.
Sit on the floor.
Okay. Oh, I've done that, but it nearly broke my knees.
Oh,
no. Yeah, can't do the God bit, but from my point of view, I think I just try to have a willingness to put love out there equally to everybody without a thought of what comes back. So I think it's a simple answer. So I don't discriminate. Just throw it out there. Let it happen. See what? Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Perfect. Steve.
Thanks, Glenn.
I'll go last.
Okay, Matthias. Can you describe the differences and similarities between love for God, love of self, and love for a partner, friend, or everyone?
Well, I guess the differences would be the God, the self, partner, friend, everyone. The similarity would be, how much what it is I choose to sacrifice for God. Am I gonna do as I want, or am I gonna do as He wants? It's when we align our will with His will that our prayers are even answered. So, and then the sacrificing what my flesh wants for what my spirit wants. For the flesh is weak, but the spirit is willing.
Perfect.
And so with sacrifice for my partner and my family, whatever it is that I guess I don't have a Bible verse for it, but eat an expensive lunch or a cheap lunch, depending on if I sacrifice my expensive lunch, then I can get a better dinner for all of us.
Sure.
Stuff like that, and sacrifice for a friend, the time that they need hands on, just being a general laborer, being there, sacrificing time to be there for them, that shows love for them.
You mean like helping someone move, for instance?
That would be a great one.
Okay. Exactly. I'll remember you said that.
There you go. And everyone, I would say Talking Doctrine would be an example of that.
Okay. Perfect.
Where sacrifice time, where I can just share the love for everybody.
Yeah. And you do take a lot of time in that way. If you're just talking about Talking Doctrine and the amount of time that you invest and sacrifice. I know I've heard you say that you definitely don't sacrifice your family on, you're not like neglecting anything at home. In fact, that you make it a point to put your family first, but that there is some sacrifices made of your own time in the area of talk and doctrine as a ministry. So that's obvious. That's a good point. I like that. All right, Steve, you're last up, buddy, for this one. Then we can move on to the next one.
Woo! All right.
All right.
Great answers from everybody.
Wonderful.
And I think part of the reason why I wanted to go last was because I answered a lot of this question already.
Yeah.
So, there's not, I mean, I could kind of repeat myself.
No,
I
please
do think there's, no, I wouldn't remember exactly what I said anyway.
That's true.
But, the basic difference between, similarity between love for God, that's a really, is the best I can do is to offer up my reasonable service. But I have no similarity apart from God's love dwelling in me. I can't even come close to being able to love like God in myself.
Correct.
And so, the difference between that and love for self, partner, and others is I fail out of my, the fact that I still live in the flesh. I'm human. But God loves everybody perfectly. I don't. When I am able to love through him and his love shine through me to others, then that's the closest I can be in similarity to loving like God. But God does everything the best.
Yeah.
So that's that.
Perfect. Thanks, Steve. Appreciate that. It's a great answer. All right. So this next one, I'm going to incorporate the two because one leads to the real question number two. So the first part is, does openness to God in your personal relationship with him provide a door key for incredible life-changing experiences in this life? That's the first one. Does anyone want to take that? That's actually a great question. Does openness to God in your personal relationship with him provide a door key for incredible life-changing experiences in this life? So the way I'd like to do it is if you answer the first question, then I'll give you the second part. And then you can answer that one on your turn. So does anyone want to take this one?
Yeah, I will.
Jen, go right ahead.
Yeah, I would say yes, for sure. There's something incredibly freeing about being authentic with God. And that authenticity is definitely the door key for an incredible life-changing experience in this life, as far as my opinion goes, my personal experience.
Sure.
Before, for me, even with the knowledge that he knows everything, I still tried to hide parts of myself with him, which the relationship, and now it's completely open and free. I'm just completely in myself with him, and it makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
So that's my answer.
Okay, so you can answer the second part then. What might prevent us as people from turning God's key and opening love's door?
I think hiding. And I think fear of him truly seeing us. I mean, he does see us, whether we try to hide or not. But fear of being fully known and knowing that he fully knows us. There's just like an acceptance about that, I think.
Yeah.
That come to, and an acceptance of knowing that, we can try to hide, but there's nowhere we can hide. And that's not meant to be a scary thing.
No.
But it's just he fully knows us, and that's an amazing, wonderful thing. So
perfect. Thanks, Jen. So I would answer, does openness to God and your personal relationship with him provide a door key to incredible life-changing experience in this life? Absolutely. I would agree with what Jen said. And for me, I've had times in my life when I was in a place of hiding from God in some ways. Not completely, because that was too scary for me. I couldn't ever turn my back on my beliefs and just shut them off completely. But even in you guys have heard me talk many times about the rebellious period that I went through in my life, and making poor choices and things like that. But I guess if I get a mental picture of it, it would be like me skittering off in the woods, but staying on the outside, staying close to the edge where I knew how to get back out again. And fortunately for my relationship with God, God is never too far away. He's always there. We might try to run from him, but he is always within reach and always knows where we are, even if we think that he doesn't or we don't feel him there. And that's something you've heard me talk about too. So as far as question 2, for me, what might prevent us as people from turning God's key and opening love's door? I agree with you, Jen, that hiding is definitely a factor. Fear that we don't deserve his love, feeling inadequate. But the thing is, any reason that you could come up with for not turning the key and opening love's door is not a healthy one. And that's by your understanding of God. God is love. So if we open our hearts and lives to God, then you are turning the key and opening love's door by accepting that. And for me, some of it was based on past experience, being hurt before, being betrayed, and being abandoned and things like that. It left me stung for a while, and I was definitely I was saying yes to God's love, but not yes to relational love. And that's happened in friendships too. I went for a long period of time where I wasn't open to making new friends. I had a few friends that I trusted, and I wasn't opened. I've had this sign on for my moniker on True Story Live, and it just simply says "open." And that has significance for me. I don't know that I've ever really talked about that. I think we did talk about it briefly on one show, but to me, it is being open to everything, being open to life, being open to love, being open to other people. And the sign used to be to some relationships, it was closed. I had the key, I understood the key, but I wasn't opening the door. I was closed off to it, and now it's completely open. It's no longer closed, and God has been instrumental. If I didn't have God, for me, I'm not answering for anyone else, just for me. If I didn't have God, I would not be open. I would be a closed off person. I wouldn't know how to love. I wouldn't be able to experience that. I wouldn't know how to treat people properly. It is very much tied in for me to God helping me learn that, and by showing me not just by his word, but by being in a relationship with him and him showing me his existence and showing me his love has put me into a place where I'm able to accept the love from other people and be able to express that as well to them. All right. So who would like to take it next? Either Matthias or Steve. Glenn, go ahead.
I think Glenn's trying to say something.
Yep, thank you.
Yeah, he only flashed his microphone 14 times, but you weren't looking at him.
I didn't hear any of that.
Oh, that's good. I'm keeping still, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I've got a question based on your answer, JC and Jen. Are you saying that if one is not fully open in their communication with God personally, it's going to have an effect on your opportunities in love with regard to life?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Can you explore that a bit, please?
Go ahead, Jen, if you want to.
Well, when I talked about before that the love for myself and for other people overflows out of the connection with God, and him being the source, if there's a blockage in the relationship with God, there's only so much that can be poured in.
There it is.
And so there can only be so much that's poured out.
Yep.
That's my answer.
Beautiful.
So Jen, just a quick one. Are you saying that in order to have a fully authentic relationship between two believers in this life, each of them has to be fully open?
Yeah. I believe that.
I think it can be hindered if they're not. Not that it's impossible, it's just hindered and it's not fully enjoyed or fully lived out, if you will.
Perfect.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah. So I'll add to that what Jen said. So if you have two people that are believers, in other words, they both call themselves believers, they both believe in God, and you have one of them that's getting closer, that's growing, that's changing. You have another one that believes in God, but they're not really pursuing Him. They're not seeking His face. They're just a believer, just in knowledge alone, and they're also not pursuing their. Let's say it's a guy. So let's say the guy is not pursuing his wife and not growing in love towards her and not growing in love toward the scripture and just kind of a believer in name only. And then the other person is completely pursuing God, seeking His face. They're growing, they're changing, they're connected to the vine. They're being filled with this overflow of love from God. And they're wanting to give it to the other person, but the person is closed off. They're not able to accept the love that's being offered because they're crimping the connection. If you look at it as a wire or a Wi-Fi connection, something like that, it's that they're not turning on their Wi-Fi. It's shut off. The cord is there, the connection is there. They have all the potential to have free-flowing Wi-Fi and have it work properly, but they're, for whatever reason, and you could use a number of different reasons why they're choosing not to. But the connection is crimped. It's cut off. It's not free-flowing. I hope that explains a little bit more, Glenn.
Thanks.
Yep, sure. Steve or Matthias?
Does openness to God in your personal relationship with Him provide a door key for an incredible life-changing experience in this life? Well, of course it does, but that has nothing to do with salvation.
No.
So, it shouldn't even be part of your you going around telling people, "Oh, look at what I've had this incredible change, this life change in me." And if somebody knew you from before and then they know you today, they're gonna know anyways. You don't have to go around telling people. And there's no reason to. That's like a boasting in self type of thing. So somebody who's looking to really know God and wanting to get saved, they shouldn't be looking for any life-changing experiences when it comes to being open to having a personal relationship with God. That's just a common misconception that a lot of people who think religion and Bible are the same. Well, I mean, I guess that's most of the world. But what might prevent us as people from turning God's key, opening love's door? I mean, what does that mean? Are we talking about being saved? Because if that's what that means, then turning God's key has to be believing.
Okay.
And what prevents somebody from believing? Well, pride.
Yes.
So that's what keeps everybody from receiving the forgiveness that Jesus has already finished.
Perfect.
Which would be what's behind love's door.
Yes.
He is the way, the truth, the life. He is the door, he said.
Beautiful. Perfect, Matthias. Thank you so much. Thanks for your answer. Steve? Steve-O.
Yo.
You ready for this one, buddy?
Yeah. I'll kind of bounce off Matthias's answer a little bit.
No problem.
But my first answer to this question is just a simple yes. And in the way Matthias described it, pride is a closed mind.
Yeah.
To God. So there, humility is the opposite, and that would mean, being open to the reality that there is a God, and then to seek Him, to find Him, even though He finds us.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's some wording there that maybe could be worded better. I don't know. But in essence, even for salvation, there is some sense of, Romans 1, it says, that God had already revealed himself to them, and they chose not to, uh, you know, uh, consider him and went about their own way.
Mm-hmm.
And so closed their mind to his existence and became a fool.
Mm-hmm.
Proverbs says, a fool says in his heart, there is no God. And I don't mean to call anybody a fool. Um, but I'm just quoting scripture here.
It's
And I
fine.
say
No,
it in the most loving way I can, that, uh, so for me, in our walk with God, um, that there's the sense of coming into agreement and alignment with God, kind of like Matthias said earlier. When we align our will with His, is what I would say when we become open, when we're open to God in our own lives. Um, and like Jen said, not trying to keep doors closed in our own life that we don't want God to see, even though we know He sees everything. And so there is some kind of sense of being open with God and saying, "Yep, here I am, God, flaws and all my worst flaws, all the things that I don't want to tell anybody about. Let me tell you about, so you can work in me and help me grow into being more like your son, and being uh and that's the really the key to being more loving, when and allowing God to change us and mold us and shape us into being more like his son, which would make us more loving to others. So it's allowing God to because God doesn't force belief on us. He certainly also doesn't force us to walk in line with his will.
Mm-hmm.
And when we actually do that, I would say that is being open to God's working in our lives, whether that means we got to go through some tests and trials, so that God can work out those character defects out of us. When someone prays for patience, God, God usually sends something that challenges your patience.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when loving others is hard to do, when you struggle with loving people that you find it hard to love, God usually sends people that you would find hard to love.
Yeah.
So in order to help you grow in your ability to love people that you find unlovable, and to show you that even the worst of sinners, God still loves. And when you, kind of like what I was talking about before, understanding that I am wretched without Christ, without His righteousness
Mm-hmm.
given to me, when I understand the depth of God's love for me, despite the depth of my depravity,
Yeah.
really makes it to where, who am I to look at someone as less deserving than love, when I know how bad I am and how much God still loved me?
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
how dare I look down on someone else and not attempt to show them the love of Christ?
Mm-hmm.
And
Wow.
that doing that is the key to opening up the possibility for life-changing experiences, and especially if you're able to come alongside at least one person in your life as a believer and show them the love of God, especially if it's an unlovable person to you, and you're able to look past that and show them the love of Christ and see a life-changing experience for them happen. And yes, the gospel is not about a change, a, a change of life, but there is a change that happens scripturally when you're reborn. You've been quickened alive. So that part is a change, but not in the sense of someone that says you have to have all these works and everything. No, to show that you're saved. No, what saves me is Christ. And so there's a twofold aspect to our testimony. One is Christ, but also Christ enabling us to do. And so, yes, you point to his salvation that is in him alone, but also to the fact that he carries me through life and enables me to do good things, to conquer things, to conquer sin in my life, to, even though none of us is able to be 100% perfect, without Christ, we could do nothing. And with Christ, it says we can do all things. And so the key to that is abiding in him, both as to be in the vine to begin with, and then, like we were talking about last night, practically focusing on walking with him instead of worrying about sin, because if you're focusing on your relationship with God, then you're not focusing on sin. And so you're able to impact people with both the gospel and showing what God can do in your life as well. He didn't just leave us here alone after he died for us. He said he'll walk with us and be a comfort to us. So we can comfort others as we ourselves have been comforted by God.
Beautiful. Perfect, Steve. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. So we have several questions here, and we're not going to get to all of them. So one of the ones I think is the most important, because there's a point to be made here within the question. So right above question 3, it says, if you believe God created you out of love, then is it reasonable to suggest that God wants to see you with as much love in your life as there can be? And I would like to answer that one first, and then I'll pass it along to the panel, and then we'll try to get to the next 2 questions. If we have time remaining and we don't go over too much, then we'll answer some of these other ones that we have in the middle here that's embedded in the description. So if you believe God created you out of love, which I do believe, then is it reasonable to suggest that God wants to see you with as much love in your life as there can be? Yes, not only that, but the fruits of the Spirit are, the first fruit is love, and it is described as the one that means the most, charity and love. I'm using that as the same definition. So I am expected to treat fellow believers with love. I'm expected to love my enemies. If I get married, I'm expected to love my wife like Christ loved the church and be willing to give up my life for her. I'm expected to love. I'm expected to express love towards others. So yes, he does want there to be as much love in our life as there can be. It's the greatest thing. The Bible goes on and on to say that if I have, and this is a paraphrase, not a direct quote, but if I have all knowledge, I prophesy and I tell other people the future, and I have all these other gifts, but I don't have love, then I'm nothing. I'm worth nothing. All the other gifts that we're given in life, if we don't have love along with it, then it doesn't have any meaning behind it. If I can give someone a bunch of knowledge, and help them out of a particular problem, but in all my words and all my dialogue, it doesn't include love or charity for that person, then it's just words. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, and that's not from the Bible, by the way. I think it's attributed to Roosevelt, I think, said that, but there seems to be some argument about that. I had it on my profile picture for a while because it's such a great quote. It's something that I found to be true. So that's my answer to the first one. Absolutely, we're expected by God to have as much love in our life as possible. Does anyone want to take that one next? Glenn?
I'll give it a shot. That question was really prompted by things I see on quite a lot of chat sessions, and that is that people say, okay, God's the only love, and therefore I don't really want to get involved in love in this life because it's going to diminish or somehow dilute my love for God. And I just shake my head and I couldn't understand it.
Yeah.
That's the reason for the question, really.
Yeah.
From my point of view, it just seems to be counterintuitive.
I would agree. If you heard someone saying that, I don't think they understand what love is supposed to be. Love is the whole.
Can Glenn repeat that? I think it was. I think that's worth repeating.
Okay, on chat boxes, and I've seen it on Matthias's channel and others, which I do a bit of homework on this stuff, and
sure.
there's been people saying, if I don't want to have love in this life because if I do, I feel I'm diluting my connection with God. In other words, it's being tainted by earthly or human experience, and I was finding that extremely difficult to come to grips with because these people are, in many respects, saying I'm living in self-imposed misery. I'm deliberately denying myself the opportunity for love in this life, and that doesn't seem to make any sense that God would be suggesting that to anybody. So if you can comment, I would be very appreciative.
I've not ever seen that in Scripture. In fact, I've seen the opposite. I've seen God, as I said in my answer, God commending His love toward us first, and the whole experience of being here in the first place and having a chance at eternal life and a relationship with God is based on His love for us first by sending His Son into the world to die and raising Him up from the dead. In order so that we all could be loved and all live in eternity with Him. The Bible is a love letter. I've said this so many times, and it's true. This is what I've discovered just in reading the Bible and seeing His purposes for having His Son come here in the first place is all based on love. And if someone understands the full scope of God's love for us in that He sent His Son, then they're going to have love in their hearts and lives, and they're going to be able to express that. It is one of the ways that we know that someone is a part of the family of believers is by the love that they show for one another. Now, here's where it gets sticky. When I see the so-called believers treating each other and not seeing any love, but seeing nothing but contention and derision, it's difficult for me to know for sure, because it seems like their label that they're putting on themselves as a Christian doesn't match their behavior. Their behavior certainly and many times is not Christ-like. So it's a complicated issue, Glenn, and I certainly understand from a non-believer's perspective when you see people in quote-unquote believers' chat rooms or commenting on believers' shows, and you see comments like that. To me, I don't think that they understand what it is. But someone else can take a whack at it if you want. Anyone else want to help Glenn out a little bit with that one? Steve?
Sure. Love to. I think that's preposterous that people would say that. that to me seems to suggest, again, I say this lovingly, that they have not opened their Bible.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe they've read only a few portions that seem to suggest otherwise, but I have never found that in Scripture.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, I will stake my answer on this. This is a command to believers.
Mm-hmm.
Love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength,
Mm-hmm.
and love your neighbor as yourself.
Amen.
And actually, I would say that they are tainting God's love by not loving others.
Yes. Say that again.
They are tainting God's love by not loving others.
Yes,
Because
absolutely.
Christ died for the whole world,
Mm-hmm.
everybody.
Yeah.
And if we choose not to love other people, we are in fact restraining God's love.
Yeah.
And so that's just that kind of attitude from a quote unquote Christian is what is one of the main problems with the world about believers.
Yeah.
You know, about people that claim the name of Christ but show nothing of Christ. Because Christ was the purest example of self-sacrificial love for others, not regarding himself, but regarding us for the entirety of what he did. He didn't do that for himself. He did that for us. I mean, I guess you could say he did do it for us or for himself because he wants to be in relationship with us. And this was the only way to make that possible. So in some sense, yes, it was for us because, you know, Jesus said the Father seeks and desires. We talked about this last night. The Father seeks and desires after us.
Right.
And so he showed that desire to show his love for us and to desire relationship with us by loving us in that manner. And so far be it from us to not do our best in our reasonable service to try to show that love back to others.
Mm-hmm.
And so does God want us to have as much love in our life as possible?
Mm-hmm.
As possible, yes. And but there's a danger in that question that you could go too far with that, especially as a believer. Well, if that's the case, then I should, you know, be married to 50 wives. No.
Right.
And to put it bluntly, that number one, that's not the purpose of marriage. It's supposed to be one man and one woman. But also, as a pastor, a former pastor of mine said, the reason God said to have one wife was mercy.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a joke.
No,
You know, because you know, to be able to love one wife to the best of your ability and sacrifice like Christ did for your wife, for one wife, is a challenge in and of itself.
Yeah, sure.
Let's, you know, the more you add, the more challenging that's going to be to lay your life down for your wife if you have more than one.
Yeah.
I mean, then you have to start balancing, oh, who do I sacrifice for? Do I sacrifice for this one at the expense of this one? No, just show your life for the one.
Yeah, just one. Yeah. Only need the one, Steve.
That's right.
That's enough of a challenge. Right.
Just
to pour all of your love into one person and do it like Jesus says to do it in his word.
Yeah.
Just to be willing to lay down everything.
Amen.
And
so let's not, my answer to that is let's not go to the extreme of the Luciferian teaching of, you know, whatever thou wilt.
Oh, no.
Aspect of have as much love in your life as you want.
Yeah.
You know,
that's selfish love rather than selfless.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. So that's, I just wanted to make sure that part was pointed out. But yes, have as much love in your marriage as possible. Have as many friends as possible that you can pour out your life into, and that kind of a thing without going into sin's territory and demolishing the whole point and essence of being a believer.
Perfect. Matthias, do you want to take a run at it?
Sure, I can try.
Well, yeah. Don't sound too enthusiastic, buddy.
Well, with it doesn't. I don't get the point of somebody saying. I don't. Other than somebody saying that they, would rather be a eunuch for Christ's sake.
Okay.
I don't see why anybody would say, "Oh, I'm not gonna love." Because gets I don't want it to distract from God. When you get saved, it's like your love for strangers appears. It's like you can't really help.
You can't help
this love, and should you have as much in your life as you possibly can? Yeah, but remember, love is sacrificial.
Yeah.
So, how much can you sacrifice? Jesus sacrificed all.
Yeah, he did.
So, yeah, you can definitely, God created, I don't know if out of love is accurate. He created to love. And so then it would be reasonable.
Is that not out of love then? Out of his love?
Sure. I think I think he created out of his wisdom.
Okay. Do you think that sending his son is out of his love?
Yeah.
Okay.
You're right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's sacrificial.
Totally sacrificial. It's sacrificing everything.
Right, but I don't see creation as being sacrificial.
Okay. Yeah, I understand. I understand the difference. You're making a differentiation between the two. I understand.
But I do think that the rest of the question is accurate in that, yeah, it is reasonable to think that he wants us to have as much love in our life as there can be.
Perfect.
Even if it's somebody who decides to live a life of a eunuch for Christ's sake.
Right.
They should have just as much love in their life. I would say that somebody who sacrificed that part of their humanity for Christ can love people way better than any of us can.
Well, yeah, because
they sacrifice that.
Their love wouldn't be based on lust. It would be just love, not based on any physical needs or wants. It would be just based on any kind of spiritual love. Is that what you're getting at?
Well, and also that they actually sacrificed they loved me long before they even knew anything that I even existed.
Right.
Because they sacrificed their will and wants in this life to serve Christ, serve God, which in turn is serving others.
Right. Okay. Perfect.
They loved me by doing such a thing.
Yeah.
Even if I never really have relationship with them, I'm part of the world, and they did it for the world.
Mm-hmm.
So then question 3, what do you see as the ultimate love experience for you, regardless of whether you've experienced or not? I mean, that one's easy. Calvary.
Yeah.
And yes, I have experienced it.
You have, yeah, absolutely. Okay.
That would be the ultimate one.
Yeah, I think any believer would say that too. I mean, they would say that that'd be the ultimate sacrifice, as I'm referring to the Bible being a love letter to us from God. And his verb, to use what Steve said, his loving verb is sending his son, who loved us so much he's willing to give up everything, including his original position in heaven, for us to be reconciled to God, is the ultimate showing of love. Jen, did you want to comment on this one?
Yeah. Finding my, okay, so
you're being such a trooper, by the way. I know that you're not feeling well. So we're going to, before you answer, Jen, these questions I feel are so important. And we did title it part 1, so there will be a second part. So we're not going to get to all the questions tonight, but we will get to them. I like things to play out, and the way that people answer the questions, and as long as it takes to get through them all. So it was a pretty good idea that we weren't going to get through all of them point by point, but they are important. So we will be coming back to them in part 2. Yeah. So go ahead, Jen. Sorry.
Okay. My answer is yes. God is love. So it makes sense that if he is love and he created all things, especially us, out of love, then I think he delights in us living life with as much love as possible. And yeah, like I understand what Steve was saying about, hey, let's love everybody, do what thou wilt. And I don't mean it in that way, but
yeah, of course,
just in a godly sense of just an outpouring of love. So that's my answer.
Perfect. Thank you, Jen.
Welcome.
Did I get to everyone on that one? And since Matthias answered question 3 already, then we'll go to that question next. So question 3, this will be the last question for tonight, and then we'll save the rest for part 2. What do you see as the ultimate love experience for you, regardless of whether you have experienced it or not? Steve, you want to answer that one? Question 3.
Repeat Matthias's words. That's it. I can't. There's nothing else that can compare.
Right.
Nothing.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I would agree.
But Christ.
Okay. Jen?
Yeah, my answer was, I think someone dying for another is the ultimate form of love. And so God sending his son to die for us is the ultimate show of love in my life and my experience.
Yeah. I would add to that too, that since the husband in Scripture, the husband is told in a marriage to love his wife like Christ loved the church and be willing to give up his life for her, is mirroring what Jesus did for the body of Christ, for the body of believers, the family of God. So we're supposed to do that. And how that he's not asking us, though it may turn out like that. I guarantee you, if I were married and my wife and I were walking out of a restaurant and some guy stuck a gun in our face, I would stand in front of my wife. No doubt about that in my mind. I don't have to test the theory. I don't have to experience it to see how I would react. It's going to be my natural desire to protect her. I hope I don't have to give up my physical life, but I would be willing to do that. And that's the same for any children I might have. If I were to have children, I would, if something was going to harm them, I would step in front of a bus to push them out of the way. I absolutely would. I know that 100%. And I've been robbed at gunpoint, and I wasn't around any wife or anything. I have experienced that, and experienced how that feels to be literally facing death. And I already know how I would react based on it happening. And I had no control in the situation whatsoever. And I remained calm and knew that my life was in God's hands and there was nothing that I could have done about it. But in a situation where I'm protecting someone else, I would definitely fill that role. But I said that saying that God doesn't always expect us in those terms to give up our physical life. but we are meant to put our wife first over our own needs, and that means watching football. It means spending time with the guys. It means, video games or whatever things a guy might enjoy doing. His wife should come first, and I don't think that happens the way that it's laid out in Scripture. And using myself as an example, in my first marriage, I would have given my life up for her if it had come to that. My life was based on fulfilling her needs and her desires and her sicknesses and catering to her. And unfortunately, to the point where sometimes I sacrificed bits of myself. Love should be sacrificial, but it very much was based on the other person that I was with not being able to feel or accept love. And it had nothing to do with me personally. It had to do with her capacity to be able to receive love. Now, in terms of God, we become able to receive His love at the minute that we accept His offer. And then the rest of our life is spent us learning what that means, and we'll have eternity to understand God's love. I don't think it's possible in this realm to fully grasp it, but it's enough to know that He did send His Son for us, and that would be, in my estimation, also the ultimate love experience. And it is a shadow of what marriage should be. And for me, I would put myself under those parameters of the way that I'm supposed to be a husband, especially having experienced the disappointment of choosing poorly the first time. It would never happen like that again. I would choose someone that was able to accept love and be loved and to be able to give it in return. So that means that when I do give, as Matthias has pointed out a few times, sacrificial love, that I'm choosing someone that is also willing to do that with me and to put God first in our marriage. And that would give us a greater chance of success if God's first. All right. I think everyone answered. Did everyone? Glenn, what do you want to answer? Question 3. What do you see as the ultimate love experience for you, regardless of whether you have experienced it or not?
I have experienced it, and I would say it's when there's equality between giving and receiving. That is, to my mind, as good as it can get. Oh,
say a little more on that, please. That's an excellent point.
Well, when there's a balance between like an equilibrium, so I think you mentioned it. It's when you feel that you're just not emptying out for somebody, and the word sacrificing was used. Well, I don't feel when it's equal that sacrifice comes into it. It's just I think sacrifice relates when the scales are unequal, and for that reason, I would say when there's equality, balance, equilibrium, that to me is as good as it can get. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, so Matthias answered, I answered, Jen, Steve, everybody answered that one, I think. That's good. All right, so we're just at the top of the hour, and I don't feel like we need, especially with Jen not feeling well and everything, we love for her to be part of the panel, and especially on a topic like this, that we want all voices and all opinions to be fully heard. And there are several more questions to answer. So Glenn, your job would be to, since we already have part 2 planned out, is to add the questions that weren't answered. We can go over that later and just make sure we know what ones we didn't get to, because there are several. We did pretty good. We got over halfway with a lot of the questions that came up. And everyone on the panel, thank you so much for your answers and for your consideration of all of these. And I just want to take my hat off. I'm not wearing a hat, but if I was a hat wearer, I would take my hat off to Glenn. He puts a lot of time and effort and preparation into these, and I just love where the show has gone from the beginning when we started the question and answer thing. to this point where God is embedded even in the questions and the fact that it comes from someone that claims to not believe, and I'm not questioning that, Glenn. I'm just saying that coming from a person that doesn't believe, the questions have within them an element of understanding of it. At least there's an understanding, it seems like, on your part more than when we started. And it comes out in the questions, and it's extremely valuable. And I'm happy the way that the TSL has turned out to be, and I'm excited about the future. I know that we have big plans moving forward, and a lot of this took a lot of time to build up to kind of talk about all the topics that we've talked about over 21 shows, and kind of setting a baseline of understanding on some of these things. We couldn't just come out of the gate and talk about love just in and of itself without having some of the definitions. I know that anytime we've referred to love, Steve especially, I remember getting upset with him at first because I would ask a question and it was clearly about marriage, and then Steve would say, "Well, what kind of love are you talking about? There's all these different kinds of love." So, like, Steve, it's about marital love, buddy. It's hilarious, but he's right though. There are different kinds of love, and when you're talking about the love of God or a Christ-like love or a believer's type love, it can be different than love from the world, right, Steve?
Yes, yes. I'd say that I think all the aspects, all the different types of love should be present in a marriage.
Yeah.
You should have the God-like love,
Mm-hmm.
the unconditional love. You should have the brotherly love, where you're friends with your spouse. You should have the eros love, Paul says you shouldn't keep yourselves from coming together, literally,
Yeah.
but for prayer and fasting, an agreed upon time of prayer and fasting.
Mm-hmm.
So you shouldn't withhold that aspect of the eros, the erotic type of love from your partner. That should be present in marriage.
Right.
There's several, there's at least five in I believe the Greek that talk about different types of love, and I think they should all be present in a marriage.
Yeah.
And the brotherly love and the agape, the God love, should be um, present in our interaction with others,
Yeah.
especially our friendships and things, and even for people we meet one time. The agape, the love of God, should be
Mm-hmm.
what is present.
No, absolutely. I agree completely. And I think that, especially in a marriage, Steve,
And
you can be
yeah.
you can be friends. You can have a friendship love with your spouse,
Mm-hmm.
and also the other types of love, the spiritual love and the physical love, and all that it's the one thing where all the different ways that you love someone should play a factor. I think that's an important point that you
Mm-hmm.
make.
And I did want to make this point earlier, like with one of the reasons why I think a lot of marriages fail is because they're lacking the agape, the unconditional love part, and quite possibly also the brotherly love part, the friendship love. But I think more than that, that most marriages start and are founded upon the eros
Mm-hmm.
type of love only, the feeling, the chemical reaction of two people coming together, that high that you get, that euphoria. If all you have is eros, it's
Mm-hmm.
going to fail.
Amen.
So you need the agape, you need the brotherly love,
Uh-huh.
the friendship love for it to last, because eventually that eros is, that's not going to be quite so much there, all the time. And that's why I say love is a verb,
Yeah.
and choosing to continue to love your spouse when things don't quite look the same as when you first met them.
Yeah.
Um, and when they're not quite the lovable person you fell in love with.
Yeah.
When you fell in love with them, all their flaws you could look past, but 5 years later you cannot stand certain things. And
Yeah.
are you going to look past those things?
Yeah.
Even though, like, certain things they do grate on your nerves. Do they tap their feet, or do they chew with their mouth open sometimes, or do they put just those weird things that people do, that when you're in that falling in love stage, you seem to be able to just look past it. You don't even see their flaws and yada yada. Oh, they're just the most perfect person, and then you find out what they look like without their makeup. I mean, just silly stuff. This is silly stuff I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But there have been marriages that have been wrecked by those things.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, where was the agape love?
It
Where
didn't
was the
exist.
God love, the unconditional love
Yeah.
that looks past the flaws?
Yeah.
Where was that? Was that ever there? Was there a real friendship ever there?
Mm.
If all it was based on the eroticism type of love, then that's gonna fail.
Yeah.
And I think that's why so many marriages fail today, because that aspect is so pushed by society today.
Yeah.
That's what love is.
Mm-hmm.
That's not that's 1/5 at the very minimum of what love is supposed to be between a husband and a wife.
Yeah. That's an excellent point. And I'm sure Glenn would even agree on that, even though he's not looking at it from the aspect of God. That it's not just a physical relationship. It's a lot more, isn't it, for you, Glenn?
Absolutely. But when I think the first meeting I had with my wife, she said, this works from the top down. She said, if you're spiritually connected, the rest of it, and it's authentically spiritually connected, the rest of it has to fit into place. If it doesn't, it's not authentic.
Right.
And have often reflected on that statement, and I cannot see one reason why that's not true. But if you connect at a physical level, I think just one night stand or whatever you decide, I think you're really setting yourself up for a potential disappointment.
Mm-hmm.
Coming from the other angle, from my personal experience, I know that for me, it just has been absolutely seamless. Never a denial of trust. It's a values-driven spirituality as well.
Yeah.
All of those things, like us people said, I think it's the unconditional love, acceptance, being authentic, being truthful, being open, all the stuff we've been doing on TSL. It just all comes in one package.
Yeah.
And if you maintain your integrity and it's not compromised, it has to work out. It cannot fail, because you can't go against the authentic part of yourself. If it fails somewhere along the line, I think you've stuffed it up.
Yep. Thank you, Glenn. That's perfect. Pleasure. That's perfect. We'll stop there. We have more questions, as I said earlier, to go over, and we'll do that in part 2 for for Sunday night's episode. I will get to the panel, and everyone will get a chance to say goodnight, but I just want to say thanks to the chat room. Thanks for showing up, guys. We appreciate you so much. And for everyone that's new, there's a couple new people tonight. Frank CB, I think maybe that's what it is. Welcome. I appreciate you coming by. Charlie, I haven't seen him in here before, so if I didn't catch everyone who's new tonight, thank you for being a part of the show. We hope that if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe and hit the bell so you can get notifications of when we're broadcasting. But we do broadcast every Sunday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And please, if you are a referral from Renee from the video that she put on, please do make a comment in the description, comment on the show, and let us know that that's the case. If you're listening to the playback, please do that as well. If you came over from Renee's referral, just let us know that in the comments so we can say hello to you and let us know it's the first time that you've listened. We will appreciate that. All right. So for next week, it'll be part 2 of the topic that we covered tonight. And we'll get to the questions and we'll flesh those out a little bit more. Great show tonight, guys. I appreciate each one of you on the panel. And we'll start out with Glenn. Glenn, just say goodnight to everyone in the chat room, and I'll finish up. So, Glenn?
Good night all. Thanks for coming, and thank you so much for your contributions. Always, always appreciated and fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Good night to the panel, too.
Yep. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it. And Jen, would you like to go next?
Yeah, thanks, guys, for being here, and we appreciate all of you on the panel and chat room, and we just appreciate y'all's feedback and your comments, and yeah, just glad to be here despite having a headache.
Yes, you did so good. You know, what a trooper. I think I mentioned it earlier, but headaches aren't fun, and I know you've been you started not feeling well yesterday, and then it kind of spilled over in today. So thank you so much for coming anyway. We do appreciate it, Jen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Steve?
Yo, yo, yo. Good night, everybody. Good night, chat room. Good night, peoples. Glad to have everybody here. And yes, thank you again, Renee, for highlighting this channel, this awesome channel. Awesome, awesome, awesome. And yeah,
talk about your channel. Yep.
Sure. Tune in to my channel this Saturday. Should be doing a part 2 on how to abide, and I'm putting a link in the chat to my last night's broadcast, so you can get to my channel from there easily.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to spell it out, just click the link.
Click the link.
Click my name. That's me, Soldier for Christ. We are at war. If you'd like to join us over there, Jason and Jen are usually part of it as well. So, and we add a few other people usually too. It's a great time. So, talking about spiritual warfare.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All
Good
right.
stuff. All right.
Good night, everybody. God bless.
Yep. Thanks, Steve. And Matthias from Talking Doctrine. Say goodnight to the chat, and then anything you want to say about your channel. And
all right, good night, chat and panel. Questions were good as always. Just remind everybody that true love is always sacrificial, and it's always a choice. And it's kind of funny because believing it's not something that is a choice. You look at, it's a choice to look at the evidence, but when it comes to believing, the evidence persuades you. That's how it's been with everything else in your life. And when it comes to love, it truly is choosing, and it is sacrificial. That's what's awesome. God chose every single one of us. Steve was talking to that earlier. So the sacrificial and choice, and then Talking Doctrine, just have the normal broadcast this week so far. Maybe a discussion coming up on Saturday, but most likely an open panel. So nothing real special this week.
Okay, same stuff. So I'll be on there tomorrow. You have a guest host, David, I believe. Is that right?
Right. Yeah, I got a email. I don't know exactly what we're going to title it, but he's going to focus on a few scriptures. So, but yeah, David is the guest host for tomorrow night.
Okay, perfect. So that's Monday's Milk on Talking Doctrine between 9 and 9:30 Eastern Standard Time on Talking Doctrine. So come hear me over there, and it's a great broadcast for people that just want to hear the milk of the Word, and I love being a part of that. Also, I'll be on Brother Luke's channel, Sin City Preacher, on Wednesday for the Bible study if you want to hear that, and I'll be on Steve Steve's show, as he mentioned, along with Jen on Saturday evening. We tried to start at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That didn't work out. I think we didn't get started till 9:30. But that's not going to be an ongoing thing. Hopefully, we'll be able to get things dialed in earlier next week. All right. So thanks again, chat, for being a part. Thank you, panel, as usual, for being a part of the show as well. Join me next week. Join us next week for part 2 on this particular subject. And thank you so much again for showing up for True Story Live. And just before we go, just lastly, if you're listening to the playback, or if you don't know God and don't know His Son, I just implore you to, all you have to do is just ask Him, and He will show Himself to you. If you've never had an experience with God, or maybe you have, and you just don't know how to believe or what to believe, He's waiting to help you and to reach out to you. If you're hearing His voice at all, just reach out, and He'll show you His existence and show you His love. And that's it for tonight. So thank you so much again. Join us again next Sunday night at 9 p.m. for True Story Live. Until then, good night and God bless. Thanks a lot.